amazing day. So, in this session today, I'm going to explain if you are planning to move to Amazon Connect Contact Center, how do you calculate your monthly usage cost and how you can create your business case. So, think about like you're on an on prem environment where you're using legacy telephony platform and you decide to move to Amazon Connect either because your organization cloud strategy is in AWS or you want to move all your infrastructure in cloud so you don't have to pay for the upgrades or have to manage the data centers and things like that. Now, most of the people, when they try to move from traditional telephony platform to cloud, the first question comes is what sort of pricing model does Amazon has? And that's something which I'll cover in later part of the session today. But that's one of the biggest question which has been asked by most of the people. So first thing what we want to do is before we want to calculate the monthly usage cost or identify if moving to Amazon is going to be a cost effective solution, there are a few basic things you need to remember or few information you need to capture to determine how much you're going to pay to Amazon if you move to AWS cloud, right? So moving on to the next part, right? And this is I'm just doing a part one of the session. There will be a separate subsequent sessions because this is a little bigger topic. So in this session, I'm more focusing on the basic information you need for calculating the price. So let's move on, right? So first thing what you need is you need to capture below information. So think about your contact center has a lot of toll-free numbers or maybe one toll-free number depending on the organization size. So when the customer they call the toll-free number to connect to your call center. Now they could either use IVR to do a self-service or they could talk directly to an agent to which means that the call will be transferred to an queue. So there might be multiple scenarios. So the customer is calling and they can do a self-service in IVR. They can do self-service in IVR, but they still want to talk to an agent, or they don't want to do self-service in IVR. They always want to talk to an agent. So in all these scenarios, you basically want to capture these five data elements. And these five data elements will help you determine how much minutes you spend in your current telephony platform to calculate the pricing. Now, I've broken it down into four steps. So let's go to the step one, right? So and basically what we are trying to do here is identifying how many toll-free numbers or DID you have for an inbound call. And basically why you need this information is in Amazon you pay a monthly fee for the number you reserve or use for your inbound call, and it's a pretty cheap or I would say inexpensive amount, but you still need to pay that amount. So let's take an example that for DID or a toll-free number you pay $1 a month. So if you have like 50 toll-free number or 50 DIDs, you may end up paying like $50 a month. And this is just an example. The exact pricing is something which I will explain in part 2 of the session. So once you have captured this information, you move on to the next step where you would have to identify the total call volumes which come to your call center. And this could be any calls which lands to the call center using the toll-free number or the DID which has been shared by to the customer, right? You also want to know how much minutes the customer spent in IVR and what were the containment rate. So what we're trying to do here is break down the minutes by IVR and by agent. And why do you want to do that is when a customer does a self-service in IVR, they're not waiting for an agent to answer the call, or they're not waiting for somebody who would have put the customer on hold because the agent is trying to get some additional information. When they are in IVR, on an average, a customer can complete the transaction in 2 minutes. For example, if a customer calls an IVR, IVR says, okay, please enter your account number, so it can identify who that customer is. And then it would say, okay, please authenticate using either voice or any other passcode they have on the phone system. And then it would ask things like, how can I help you? Or maybe press 1 for account balance and things like that. Once the customer presses 1, it would go and fetch the account information from the backend, which could be any CIS information in your organization, and play the balance back to the customer. So if you look at all these transactions which happen in the IVR, on an average, it would have taken 2 to 3 minutes. So although when a call goes to the queue, your transactions may be much higher. So what we did here is we want to know the total call volume, the IVR call contained, which means that a customer was able to self-serve in IVR and never went to an agent. So you definitely want to know that percentage, and the average handle time in IVR. So the example where I gave that a customer calls, tries to get an account balance, and all these things takes approximately 2 to 3 minutes. So that would be your average handle time in IVR. Moving on to the next step, what you need to know is how many minutes have been spent in queue, what's your abandon rates, and what's the handle time. And again, why you need this information is, if you look at the point 5, 6, 7, 8 here in the diagram above, when the customer decides I want to talk to an agent, either they come through an IVR or they directly go to an agent. You want to know how much time they have been waiting for an agent to answer the call. And this information is required because you're still paying your telephony charges while the customer is waiting for somebody to answer their call. So you definitely need the average queue time, which some people call ASA, or average speed to answer. You also want to know the abandon percentage. And why do you want to know that is, if a customer is waiting in the queue and they decide to abandon, they actually have not gone to an agent. So your average handle time will not have that information. So you definitely want to know what's the abandon percentage and how much time it took to abandon. So there is a lot of telephony platform has information like average time to abandon, things like that. You can take that information. And lastly, you need the average handle time. Now, the different definitions of average handle time. Some of the vendors, they have average handle time as a total of your talk time, hold time, and after call work time. Now, in this scenario, you only want to consider the talk time and hold time because that's the time your call is active and that's what you're paying to Amazon. So, average after call work time is something where the call has ended and the agent state is after call work. So, there the line is not active, so you don't want to include after call work in your average handle time calculations. So, once you have captured the information like your number of toll-free numbers, your IVR containment rate and average handle time in IVR, and your queue level information, you move on to the next step. So basically what you do is think about, and this is just an illustration, right? So based on my first step, I identify I have 10 TFNs. Then what I did is I said, okay, assuming I have 100 calls a month and my IVR containment is 80%, so that would mean that 80 calls stay in IVR and do self-service and hang up. And it takes on an average 1 minute to do the self-service in IVR. Average speed to answer, this is where the customers have decided to go and talk to an agent, and they wait approximately 1 minute on an average for an agent to answer the call. which means that they're waiting in a queue, hearing queue hold musics and things like that. And your abandoned percentage is 25%. So think about 25% of not 100 calls, but 25% of the 20% calls, because 80% of the calls were contained in IVR. It's just the 20% which went to the queue. So you need to take 25% of the 20%, which is like 5 calls which got abandoned. Now, it took 1 minute for the customer to hang up, so which means that customer stayed approximately 1 minute before they decide that, I don't want to stay in the queue, let me go and hang up the call. And for the remaining 75% of the customers who go to the queue, the average handle time is 3 minutes. And again, this is all example. I'm trying to explain how the numbers would fit in here and how the whole calculation can be done. Now, so when I say average handle time, again, it's like agent is talking to the customer. So either they were talking for 3 minutes or they spoke for 2 minutes, and then 1 minute they put them on hold. It could be any combination. So once all this information is captured, there are 3 or 4 items which we need to determine. So IVR minutes, so that will be your 80 calls, which takes on an average 1 minute. So in a month, the 80 minutes is what a customer would spend uh, to do a self-service in IVR. Then you have the agent minutes. So the way it's calculated is your 20% of the calls went to the queue, which is like 20% of 100 calls a month, minus the 5% calls which abandon, multiplied by 3 minutes of the average handle time plus 1 minute of ASA, which comes to around 60 minutes. Plus, what you would do is you would take those 5 abandoned calls and multiply them with the time to abandon, which is like 5 minutes. So if you look here, the total comes to 65 minutes. So that's the time the customer or the calls which went to the queue. It took approximately 65 minutes of your telecom or to perform all the agent related discussion. The third thing what you need is the total inbound minutes. Now, the total inbound minutes is again addition of the IVR minutes plus the queue minutes, and it comes to 140 minutes, right? But here you would see why I did a separate calculation for IVR and why I did a separate calculation for agent, because for agent you need to factor the average speed to answer, the abandon percentage, the time to abandon, and average handle time. Whereas for IVR, um, it's pretty straightforward, because once you know the containment rate and the average handle time within IVR, it's easy to calculate how many IVR minutes are. But if you don't consider the containment rate and directly take agent minutes as your total minutes, in this example, if you have the same calculation where you took 100 calls a month and calculated as agent minutes, your calculation is wrong, because you're ending up paying or factoring more minutes to come up for a pricing. So if you look here, the items in red, so 10 TFNs is my input 1, 140 minutes is my input 2, and then lastly, I also need to know how much minutes or how many outbound calls you have. So think about like a customer has requested a callback, or maybe a customer sent an email with a query, and the agent wants to reach the customer on their cell phone, right? So the agent is using the soft phone to make an outbound call. Now, in this case, not every organization has an outbound call feature, but assuming that the agent would make at least 10 calls outbound a month and they spend 2 minutes per call, they're basically spending 20 minutes. So these are the 3 information you need to come up with the pricing. Now, the way Amazon charges for you is purely on the usage model, which means that there is no license cost, or if you're not using the environment, you don't have to pay for the environment being idle. So think about like you onboard one agent or you onboard 10,000 agents, you're not paying anything to Amazon. Amazon purely charges you when there is an inbound call in your call center, or you're making an outbound call. Anytime you're using the infrastructure to actually have that conversation. So, and again, the price is broken down into three components. So the first thing they charge is the Connect instance usage cost, and second thing is they charge you is your TFN DID monthly cost. So like if you remember, I gave an example that if it's $1 per TFN and you have 50 TFNs, you're like paying $50 a month. But again, this is an illustration. It's not exactly $1. You need to go and check the Amazon website to see how much is the per DID or per TFN cost. And then lastly, they charge you for the per minute usage for the of the inbound call. So think about like your call came in through an 800 number. So it came into IVR and then it went to an agent. It took approximately 4 minutes. So they're going to charge you 4 minutes of the time um, based on the pricing model they have in their website. So for each country, there are different pricing model, and this is something which I'll cover in part 2 of the session. But these are the three main charges for using Amazon Connect um, as a telephony platform. Now, again, when you set up the Amazon Connect instance, you need a lot more other services for it to work holistically. Like you would need S3 to store call recordings, and then you would need Lambda to make backend calls. You may need Lex to do the natural language integration. You need a CloudWatch to capture the call logs or the error logs or things like that. But that's again part of session 2, where I will cover those topics in detail. Now, this particular session is more focused on the basic of what information you need to derive the pricing. Now, once you have captured all this information, what you do is there's a website, https aws.amazon.com/connect/pricing, and this website is Amazon official website. There they have all the pricing information in detail, and for example, the Connect instance usage cost is 0.018 cents per minute, and it's a USD. It's pretty standard for any region in the world you set up this instance. So this is a USD for throughout the world. And then there is a TFN and DID monthly price, and then there is a per minute usage price. Now, I haven't put any pricing detail here because it's more available on this website. I don't want to keep anything over here, because if Amazon decides to change the price, I don't want you all to refer the pricing which I have provided here, but rather go into this link and find out what the pricing is. So again, in today's session, we more learned about how to capture or what information we need to come up with a pricing. Just wait for my next video, where I will explain how you can use the information you captured to and multiply it with the cost to identify how much you're going to pay in a month, plus what additional services you need for Amazon Connect instance to work. And we'll also talk about how much approximately you'll pay for those services. And once you add all those, you will come up with a monthly usage cost. And if I have to create a business case, what I would do is I would divide that with the number of agents I have in my organization. So let's say that you spend $100 a month and you have 10 agents. You're basically spending like $10 per agent. But if you have a using Amazon Connect, right? But if you have a legacy platform where for the licenses itself you are like paying $12, now here you have a business case where you can show a saving of $2 because it's just not the saving on the telecom inbounds and things like that, but it's a saving in terms of your infrastructure completely moving to AWS. Because in my other like I said, if you have a legacy platform and you're spending $12 for the license cost, it's just the license cost. On top of that, you have to pay telecom cost, you might have to pay the infrastructure upgrade cost, the professional services, and a lot more things. So that's where your business case gets stronger, because now you have a fully cloud solution and you're just paying on usage. So that's all I had today for this session. So let me know your inputs, leave a comment, and please don't forget to subscribe my channel. Thank you all.